but I didn't need to do this. You know? Which is really silly, even from the position that he was trying to disrupt it, because you gotta try and clear the name from trying to disrupt that shit. So you gotta at least go like, hey. What's up, Billy News Network?
What's going on?
We're out here.
We're here in front. This is what it is. CNN. This is CNN.
So,
Right, the CNN office. We got Veterans for Peace here. Jose Vega here, the one and only.
You know, just got back from China, and now
back from good old China.
Yeah, and now we're here. We're gonna rally down from here all the way down to 42nd.
We're going to New York.
It seems like there's a musical performance going on, but
Oh, there's Richie. Richie's right there. Richie's right there. He's talking. Boo. What? Oh yeah. Yeah, you want to say that again? We got like 7 people to look at.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
I could tighten this up.
Yeah.
You turn on corporate media right now, there's non-stop coverage about a potential government shutdown, which threatens the livelihood of countless individuals. But let me tell you what corporate media wants. That this government is nothing more than a theatrical performance of disagreement between the Republicans and Democrats designed to distract us from the truth. As the politicians bicker over budgets and appropriations, the consequences of their actions are far-reaching. Workers will be denied their paychecks. Seniors who have worked their entire lives may see delays in their pension. The most vulnerable among us, the disabled, children, will have their essential funds locked up. Programs like SNAP, Head Start, and preschool lunch programs hang in the balance. Imagine the plight of those who are straight by, living paycheck to paycheck. For them, this shutdown is not just an inconvenience, it is an emergency. Critical services like parks and libraries, Medicare and Social Security services are being threatened. But a message with one the U.S. war machine, specifically
Oh, I'm sorry.
while the
Boo.
livelihoods of millions hang in the balance, the war machine continues unabated. Weapons spending will continue to flow freely. Defense contractors and military advisors will carry on their operations, and satellite reconnaissance will persist. Not a single one of the more than 800 military bases in over 140 countries faces any threat. The aircraft carriers, the tanks, the destroyers, the nuclear submarines, they won't be running out of fuel.
Yeah.
Republicans and Democrats may pretend to bicker over budgets that millions of people in the U.S. rely upon. But when it comes to military appropriations, they stand united in their commitment to U.S. imperial domination. The most sickening aspect of this
And when you guys hold this first, I'm just gonna lock my bike up. Just hold it and record right here.
the margin is so high that children absolutely participate in this way. And what is true? That both the Democratic and Republican parties are very parties beginning to serve the military-industrial complex. While pumping the Pentagon with endless, unaccountable cash. The corporate media are not the watchdog they claim to be. They are the propaganda arm of the CIA, They're the stenographers of the Pentagon, and of course, they are very much part of the U.S. war machine that perpetuates endless war. There is a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. The masses are beginning to make the connection between the billions spent on war and their own desperation. What started with a few anti-imperialists like myself identified U.S. imperialism and NATO expansion as a root cause of the war in Ukraine is spreading like wildfire across the country. The mood is changing, and the people refuse to be silent any longer. Stop this war!
Stop!
This war!
Stop!
This war!
Stop!
We will take it on board! Stop this war! So we must stand together, united in our demand for an end to the U.S. NATO proxy war in Ukraine. And no way with China. We must demand an end to the weapons and taxpayer dollars being sent to Ukraine because we know that the war could end today if the U.S. stopped funding it. But the U.S. politicians won't because there's too much money to be made for the weapons manufacturers with the politicians getting their cut. So we're going to keep on calling out the propagandists in the corporate media who lie us into war, who lie us into supporting wars, and who lie to us about what it will take to end the war. We're going to call out the phony disagreements between both of the corporate parties and demand that the needs of the people take precedence over the interests of Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. So let our voices be heard and let our outrage fuel the movement for peace, which can only be achieved when we fight for a multipolar world. It's time for a new era where the well-being of the global working class is prioritized over maintaining U.S. hegemony through brute military force. When I say India, you say wars. Wars! The next speaker is Tyler Paul, New York City Veterans for Peace, and he's also the editor of Peace and Planet News. Let's give it up for Tyler. Thank you, and thank all of you for being here. I'm going to take a slightly different tack today. Now, all of us here, we understand the propaganda that comes out of the corporate media. We get that. We know how to read between the lines. We know how to fill in what they're not putting in because we have sources, because we have alternative means of getting the news that we don't have to depend on the corporate media. Now, the public is starting to wake up to the fact many people, they don't trust the corporate media. They don't trust them. But I don't think people fully understand how dangerous and how poisonous the propaganda coming out from the corporate media is. This is what enables war. The New York Times has never seen a war that they did not support at first. Then after the war was over, oh, we made a mistake. No, there was no mistake made. This was intentional. These wars, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya. These were all intentional wars. They knew exactly what they were doing, and so did the corporate media, because the corporate media is part of the corporate war machine. So as I said, I'm going to take a little different approach. And I want to read you something that's in an article in this paper. This is Peace and Planet News. You really all should get a copy. People read this paper and they say, this is the best fucking independent paper that I have ever read. I'm serious. And it's free. It's free. It's put out by Veterans for Peace, but it is not an ideological propaganda tool to promote Veterans for Peace. It's something different. So on page 5, you can read the whole article. I'm going to read you something from John Pilger because it means something to what we're doing here today. So John Pilger ran into Leni Riefenstahl, who was the propaganda filmmaker for the Third Reich. She was brilliant.
but you know, she didn't work for good people. So he had a conversation with her, and she told him that the patriotic messages of her film, listen to this, were dependent not on orders from above, but on what she called the submissive void of the German people. Keep that in mind, the submissive void. Then John Pilger was also talking, he was talking to Harold Pinter, the famous playwright, who died a while back. And Pinter said, U.S. foreign policy, he said, is best defined as follows. Kiss my ass or I'll kick your head in, right? It's as simple and as crude as that. What is interesting about it is that it's so incredibly successful. It possesses the structure of disinformation, use of rhetoric, distortion of language, which are very persuasive, but actually a pack of lies. It is very successful propaganda. And that's what they do. It's very successful propaganda. They have the money, they have the technology, they have all the means to get away with it, and they do. It's a brilliant, even witty, highly successful act of hypnosis. Now get this is the punchline. I asked Peter if the hypnosis he refers to was the submissive void described by Lenny Levenstein. It's the same, he replied. It means the brainwashing is so thorough, we are programmed to swallow a pack of lies. If we don't recognize propaganda, we may accept it as normal and believe it. That's the submissive void. I wanted to read that to you. And that's in an incredible article by John Pilger. Now the thing is, the public, they get it. They're not being told quite the truth. You know, that the media is distorting it. But they don't understand that they've been a victim of this propaganda since the day they were born. And all of us were. Some of us broke free from it. We opened our eyes. We saw, hey, wait a minute. Something's not right here. The New York Times, the Chicago Post, all these papers, Washington Post, they're not telling us exactly what's going on. They're promoting these wars. Was there ever a good war?
No.
There was never a good war. Okay, I'm telling you, we have the tools. That is the antidote to this kind of propaganda. We have the tools that is the antidote to the corporate media machine. That is independent media. That is really independent media. And I'm telling you, this paper, which I happen to be the editor of, but I'm not the only editor. I don't get any money for this. Okay? I get no money. It's a dynamite paper. We have some of the best writers, both internationally and nationally, that you'll find in here, including a veteran's perspective. So I'm telling you, this is a tool to get out to the people. Don't you? This is a tool that you can use to get out to the people. And it's a very effective tool. Ordinary people read this paper and they get it. All right. Thank you very much. Let's give it up for Tarek. Let's give it up for Tarek. So this demonstration was called by the Bronx Anti-War Coalition. And the Bronx Anti-War Coalition was formed. Yeah, prop it up. First of all, here's from the Bronx. Yeah. So we call this demonstration because we think that the anti-war movement needs to not only be centered in the city, but it needs to be in every single borough, including the Bronx, which has the most oppressed workers here in New York City. So with that being said, we want to invite a fellow Bronxite up, Marlo of Bronx Political Resistance, a grassroots organization educating, organizing, and mobilizing the Puerto Rican diaspora and allied towards a free Puerto Rico. Let's give it up to Marlo.
Thank you. And thank you to Bronx Anti-War Coalition. I am here on behalf of Bronx Boricua Resistance to stand firmly in solidarity with the working class victims of imperialism around the world. Puerto Ricans have been subject to the imperialist violence of the United States for the last 125 years, and it's been a colony for even longer. And while the colonial project has evolved as neoliberalism and capitalism have become dominant, Puerto Rico has been seen as little more than a pawn and a prop for the elite of the U.S. as far back as the signing of the Treaty of Paris, which treated Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam as war spoils, as strategic holdings. Puerto Ricans were granted citizenship in this country when it became clear that its positioning in the Caribbean could be a strategic asset, and that its people could be used as a pool to recruit from for the U.S. military during World War I. This has not changed. Instead, the U.S. has only further entrenched our people in this colonial relationship. From 1941 all the way through 2001, the U.S. Navy occupied the Puerto Rican island of Vieques and utilized it as a testing ground for their weapons of war, destroying the landscape with bombs and polluting it with toxic chemicals known to cause lasting damage to the environment and to human health. Puerto Ricans fought a long battle to close this naval base, but our people still suffer from the results of its operation, with Vieques suffering the highest cancer rates of the Puerto Rican population. Now, the U.S. wants to reopen Roosevelt Roads, a military training base in Ceiba almost 20 years after its closure, in order to train Ukrainian fighter pilots for its have seen the havoc that U.S. military presence has created in Puerto Rico, and we cannot allow this to stand. We must fight for a Puerto Rico that is free from U.S. imperialism and capitalism. The United States has spent too much of its history leveraging its influence on other countries for the sole benefit of its elite. Puerto Ricans are victims of this imperialist regime, but we are not the only ones. For too long, this imperial monster has wrapped its greedy tendrils around the globe, and we cannot forget that it is too often the same monster that has us in its grip, the same perpetrators of violence against difference. So with this in mind, it is vital that we act in solidarity across struggles. Puerto Rico cannot truly be free if the same systems that oppress us are allowed to persist. They will always return to bite us. We support the Black Alliance for Peace in their campaign to establish a zone of peace in the Caribbean and Latin America and demand the removal of the U.S. and NATO from the region. And we demand the immediate removal of the U.S. military from our land, our air, our seas. It is imperative that we engage in this struggle together. We cannot build the future that we're envisioning in a silo. We must organize and mobilize our communities. The only way to resist these systems is together. The capitalists and imperialists will always try to take us down and silence us and tear us apart, but we must move forward. Pa'lante, y que viva Puerto Rico libre. Free Puerto Rico. Independencia para Puerto Rico. Independencia para Puerto Rico. Independencia para Puerto Rico. Independencia para Puerto Rico. All right, so this rally is not only against NATO, it's against U.S. and Western imperialism in all its forms. So I want to invite up Colleen from the Palestinian Youth Movement. Colleen? Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm here with the Palestinian Youth Movement, the largest movement of diaspora Palestinian youth outside of Palestine. We're also here with our comrades from Al-Auda, the Real Palestine movement, and we're here, of course, to talk about U.S. imperialism. Those of us who are here understand NATO is one of the fundamental arms of the imperialist world system. And in that system, its interest lies in the perpetuation of imperial capital, in the extraction of labor and wealth from the dispossessed, and the spread of weapons intended to destroy and to suppress the world's working poor. We are here to end the demands of NATO, but we are also here
to emphasize that an end to NATO means an end to Israel. On Viva Viva Palestina! On the subject of the Zionist entity, known as so-called Israel, its role, as previously mentioned, is to serve as an outpost of Western imperialism in the Arab world. What the Zionist entity does is steal Arab land, extract Arab labor, and help to perpetuate a system of finance capital and weapons trade that comes back ultimately to the communities here in the United States. These weapons and technologies that are used on our people in Gaza and our prisoners are used to refine and ultimately to help the export of technologies that suppress the working class here in America. And we need to understand those linkages and fight against them every single day. So, to keep it short, as I mentioned, an end to NATO means support for the Palestinian Liberation Project. Thank you all for being here.
Long live Palestine! Long live Palestine!
Look,
Long live
Palestine, look.
from the lands of the sea, Palestine will be free. Let me hear you cheer if you agree. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea.
We also see that Western imperialism has its tentacles all over the world, from Palestine all the way to Peru. So next up, I want to invite Daniela Tartar, who's the president of Ex Semillas de Libertad, president of the chapter in New York. And I'm also going to invite Patricia Carvajal, who's the vice president of Ex Semillas de Libertad in Washington, D.C., a grassroots organization that has been fighting against the Dina Boluarte dictatorship in Peru. So let's give it up for Ex Semillas de Libertad.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Here, as a Peruvian Seed of Freedom, that's the name of our group, in solidarity with our Peruvian people and all the people on the world in fight for our right to live in peace. Our rich in natural resources provide the privilege for empires that at all costs want to continue taking over our resources, war, destruction, etc. The riches of our people not to the empires. These riches must be used for the benefit of our people who are dying of hunger, who are dying from the lack of medical care, no good education, etc. But every time that a legitimate president or representative of the people goes his people, the parent on alliance remove him. In Peru, in July 2001, by majority of the population, or the popular vote, Castillo Corones, a rural preacher, a farmer, an indigenous people, and the people is chosen as a president. That day, hope was born for our marginalized people, for the forgotten people, for the nobodies. On December 7, 2022, the Peruvian Congress accused against our president of the people, Pedro Castillo, the first political prisoner of this dictatorship, Dina Asesina.
Dina Asesina!
Dina Asesina! They put Dina in power, who is the head and illegitimate and surrendering government that has responded with violence using the most brutal injured, 110 and missing, many of which are students, indigenous, women, and children. Today, 10 months after, many regions in Peru are militarized by the dictatorship. We continue to mobilize until the certain government is overthrown. Our communities are organizing and mobilizing to recover and protect themselves, such as for the lithium, our equipment for preserving the agriculture, water, and land. We demand that every member of this criminal government be tried for the murders, which, according to the assessment of the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, constitute a massacre and extrajudicial execution. We ask international communities, social movements, and all international institutions to reject Dina Boluarte and demand the freedom and restitution of our president, and the freedom of political prisoners. We say, either yes, Mina no, either yes, Mina no, either yes, Mina no, life, yes, life, yes, war, no, life, yes, war, no, life, yes, war, no. Thank you. Good afternoon, brother and sister. We are here with Paula, representing Solidarity, the unit ancestral. Okay. My name is Patricia Carvajal. Voy a hablar en español. Estamos aquí todos los ciudadanos, aquí los compañeros de Semilla de Libertad, en solidaridad con el pueblo peruano y también con el pueblo de Estados Unidos y todos los pueblos del mundo en lucha por su derecho de vivir en paz. Nuestros pueblos, nuestro pueblo peruano es rico en recursos naturales, son el botín perfecto del imperio, que a todas costas quieren seguir apoderándose de nuestros recursos, creando alianzas, guerras, destrucciones, etcétera. Las riquezas de nuestros pueblos son nuestros y no de los imperios. Estas riquezas deben ser usadas en beneficio de nuestra gente que se muere de hambre, que muere por falta de atención médica, buena educación, etcétera, etcétera. Pero cada vez nuestro gobierno ilegítimo de hoy en día en Perú está representando a todas las transnacionales. En Perú, el 28 de julio del año 2021, el presidente Castillo, por mayoría de voto popular, fue elegido. Hoy nuestro presidente está en la cárcel. Por eso nosotros una vez más decimos, todos los pueblos unidos en lucha y resistencia. Gracias. Gracias. Jamás será vencido. Jamás será vencido.
So